Hey everybody, Michael Lott here. I'm here with author Peter Wells, author of the book Notes from the West Pole, Creating a Harmonious Life in an Adversarial Culture. And we're gonna have a little conversation here about fulfilling one's purpose in life and how to do it through the 3 steps, which is outlined in his book.
Here we are in June 2020, just before the solstice, and everything seems to be kind of crazy. It's not just the virus, which is huge and it's worldwide and it's got everybody dealing with. It's not just that, it's also we've just had a big deal with Black Lives Matter, and we have a system that is really in its final stages. It may not appear to it because it's very strong, there's a heavy military behind it and police behind it, but the actual gist of what's going on is no longer relevant. The idea that we have a divided culture and that we have to oppose each other to make progress, that's obsolete. Now we've got to actually proceed in this amazing transition that we're in. The transition is going from outside powers, outside authorities that have been taught to us, that have been leading us, to recognizing the inner power within each one of us. And we have to build on that in order to deal with the problems that we have. We're evolving, and the evolutionary part of us at this point is our mind and our understanding of relationship. What we have is we've inherited a way of life that is no longer working, and we have to make changes. How do we make those changes? We can't possibly stand up and expect the whole system to change, but we can deal with ourselves. And I want to make a suggestion that there are 3 steps that we can take with ourselves that assist us in this transition from being overpowered and dominated to being free and responsible for our own lives. Okay, what are these 3 steps? The first is to recognize that your life is your own responsibility. And you're free to do whatever you wish with your life. That's yours. It's nobody else's. And to take responsibility for the life is the key. Not to depend on others to guide you, but to be guided from within. Because this being that we happen to be comes from the source, comes from the intelligence of the universe, and especially right now from the intelligence of the earth, which we're at the point of understanding more and more, and our lives absolutely depend on understanding the ways of the earth we call nature. So the first step is to recognize this freedom, this responsibility, and to take the path that is going to fulfill this being that you are. That's the path. It's not following anything outside, up in the sky, or on a throne. The path is for our own fulfillment. That fulfillment is something that is purposeful. We have a purpose. We may not even know what our purpose is, but there is something to be done for this being that each one is. And we can go about doing that whenever we're ready. Getting ready is an issue because we come from a training and teachings that are perhaps not our own, that we perhaps don't fully believe in them, and that we have been guided towards usually somewhat authoritarian places, to be obedient, to conform, to expect to receive knowledge from outside ourselves. And I'm suggesting something different. I'm suggesting that this being that is largely unconscious, our consciousness is only a small part of the being. Our unconscious part remains to be heard, felt, seen, and recognized. The mental sense, the mind, can only go a certain distance because it's only dealing with what's known. So the freedom and the responsibility is the first step. In that, we have to be fulfilled. We need to be fulfilled, each of us. It's what really turns us on. And we have to follow what turns us on, and we have to be ourselves to the fullest.
Okay, so
That's the first step.
The first step, from what I hear, is taking responsibility for your own sense of freedom, your own sense of fulfillment, to realize that you're responsible for that. That's the first step. That's right?
Right.
Okay.
The freedom, as soon as you know that you're free, there's a responsibility to use that freedom. How are you going to use it? What are you going to do with this freedom? You haven't known that you were free, perhaps. Maybe that's a new realization. A young person has been trained and disciplined to be obedient to all the stuff that the parents believe in. And in a sense, we need to take a kind of inward journey to clear the way from within ourselves so that we can get a better grasp of what we're here to do.
Well, I just want to say that for most of my life, I haven't felt free. It's like, if you would have told me, like, even 3 years ago, you're free and you have responsibility to do whatever you want with your life, I'd be like, bullshit. Like, I've got car payments to make and I have all this stuff I have to do, and it kind of feels like a trap. I mean, it's like, on some level, yeah, I know that I'm free, but on a practical level, it's like the bills got to get paid, So what's your response to that?
Well, you've got to pay the bills. If you have a bill because there's something you want. It might be electricity, it might be the internet, but you want it. The responsibility is to take care of the things that you want. What you want is your responsibility. Nobody else has that responsibility. Once you know that you want something, like, a particular job, I'm not thinking of that so much. I'm thinking that this being that we are, that has been constrained and held back by ourselves, because we've been conditioned to do that. This being needs that freedom and needs to be able to look beyond what is already known into other possibilities. Okay,
well, how do you do that? Like, if you have all these responsibilities of life and you have a family to take care of and, a mortgage and all these things, and you have all this weight on your shoulders, you're so caught up taking care of all these things and running the rat race, as one might say. So how do you still manage all those responsibilities but still tap into that sense of inner freedom? Like, how do you connect to that?
Well, really with the second step.
What's the second step?
The second step is the recognition and development of your natural talents, of who you are in terms of skills, what you love to do, and developing those skills so that you can be excellent at what you love to do. That gives you a direction into the culture that is still your own. You're talking as though you've been indoctrinated heavily with outside powers. And we all have, especially in our young life, every child is born very, very dependent and has no idea what to do with themselves, but looks to their parents and perhaps their teachers to give guidance. But then we find, as we get into it, that not only is the system kind of broken that we're talking about, but our parents have been enmeshed in that broken system. And that their teachings or their experience are not really viable for us to go forward with. We have to depend, even though we are part of a Holy Trinity, Mother, Father, and child, we each are that child. Nevertheless, we are ourselves. And our parents, God bless them, they're beautiful, we love them, they don't know what this being is here for. And we have to figure that out ourselves. So it's not easy. I went to a very quiet place, a mountaintop, with my beautiful wife, and I put myself through every possible change that I could think of, and found easy pickings for what I wanted to do. Because what I wanted, more than anything else, I wanted to live in a harmonious way. I wanted to live without war. I had grown up in a war. The first 9 years of my life were the Second World War. 6 of them were that. And I managed to live, to survive, but that set me up. That set me up to be wary of conflict and to not engage. I didn't want to, if anybody's throwing conflict around, I withdraw a little bit. I don't want to be dominated, nor have I wanted to dominate. So the business of being in the culture, which is very much about domination, is anathema to me in that regard. So the second step that you take on the way through the culture, utilizing oneself, utilizing and recognizing your talents, recognizing what you love to do, and becoming excellent at what you love to do.
Okay, so you're saying that in order to find that freedom in one's life, you take your natural abilities and you turn them into skills so that you can exercise them in the culture and sort of self-generate and be of service. Really.
Well, then
that's what you're saying, right?
Yes, exactly. The third step is that. The third step is now using those skills, those natural talents that you've developed into skills, work with others of like mind for your mutual benefit without harming anyone. It's absolutely essential that we not harm each other.
Well, let me ask you this, because, from probably my early teens into my early 20s, I didn't know what the hell I was good at. I didn't know what my natural abilities were. I mean, there was legitimately a time in my life where I thought I sucked at everything. I didn't know what those things were, and I took a bunch of really weird, odd jobs, and I kind of fumbled around for a couple years, and eventually I hit a groove. But it was a process for me to really figure out what it was that I was good at and what I could really contribute to the world and to the people around me. So what would you say to someone that is just starting at square one, that's I don't even know what it is that I'm good at? How do you even create the space in your life to uncover those things?
What do you love to do? What do you love to do? And extrapolating that, it can go anywhere you want to take it. But your enjoyment of how you use yourself and your time is it. And so you develop what you love to do into a definite skill. And you work with others for your mutual benefit, and every transaction has to achieve a mutual benefit. We're going away from human conflict. Human conflict is painful and unproductive and makes a mess. And we don't need it. Our culture, our civilization has been built on that, built on wars, built on conflict. Our systems are all about conflict. So how do we then escape that or go beyond that? Through these 3 steps. The first step is to see the freedom and take responsibility for that freedom. The second is to develop your skills into attributes. Develop your skills in what you love to do. And then the third thing is using what you have developed, work with others for your mutual benefit. Now, in that, it transcends the system. Because
while still being a part of this system.
While still being a part of the system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though we can't change the government very easily, and our elections haven't been very successful, we don't have leadership as a rule, we don't have a sensible structure to our society, so we should get a sensible structure for ourselves.
Yeah, and what I hear and what you're saying and what I feel about everything that's going on, it's this system is so unstable right now. I mean, with COVID-19 and this whole government shutdown, it's nobody saw that coming. You know what I mean?
It's absolutely unknown.
Nobody saw that coming, and for me, it's like I have a hard time figuring out what to believe right now. It's like the media says one thing. There's all these conspiracy theories on the internet saying another thing. One friend says this, one friend says that, and it's like I don't even know who to listen to anymore. There's just so much confusion going on, and what I feel like with this world of so much instability, I feel like what it really is it's a call for each and every single one of us to connect with our inner voice.
Exactly.
And to take
Yes.
sort of power into our own hands to create the life that we want. Really, it's a call for personal responsibility.
And
that's what I see.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's an enjoyment of fulfillment of being who you are. You know? We have the culture is in disarray, so the more we go into that, I was thinking as you spoke, I was thinking about Muhammad Ali, whom I had the really great fortune to spend time with, and we became friends. And his beauty was in his absolute integrity about being a responsible, free self. That's what he did. He was playing in the ultimate game, heavyweight boxing. But when it came down to it, he gave up all of his championships, all of his medals, all of his money in order to say no to the government, which was saying, go to Vietnam and fight this war that we're ordering you to do.
Oh, wow.
And he says, I don't have nothing against the Vietnamese. I'm not going to go and fight them. Why would I want to fight them?
Wow.
So there it is. There's the transition from believing in yourself and knowing what you are, rather than just being obedient and conforming to society's requirements, which are obsolete, which are antiquated,
Right.
which we don't need.
Man, that's so beautiful. One of the questions that comes up for me as you're saying this is, with Muhammad Ali, he seemed really connected to his inner strength or his intuition, And I feel like one of the challenges in today's world is people don't really know how to listen to their intuition or their instinct. We've been completely removed from nature for the most part. People are living in cities, and I feel like they're just bombarded with advertisements and media and all these things, and I feel like that really disconnects people from their own intuition, from their own instinctual voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what advice could you give to someone to help them connect to their intuition, or maybe to decipher between their intuition and their conditioning or their habitual thinking? How does one connect to their intuition?
Well, I think you trust your instincts.
How do you do that?
Well, you do that in reaction for the most part. In other words, you're being herded towards something that you don't want to go to, and your instinct is telling, no, I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. You honor that. You honor the instinct. And in our world right now, the president just a few weeks ago ordered the police to dominate the protesters. Dominate the protesters.
That's crazy.
Get out of there. Mm-hmm. Don't be there. Let these people, dominate each other, but don't let that be your life that's being dominated. So our own freedom is the course we're going to. It's very difficult because there's no set path. There's no absolute way that's a guide for us. Mm-hmm. But there are teachers like Muhammad Ali and like many others who are really advocating this inner source that we have within us. Yeah. You could say that God is within us, the
Right.
power that we give so much power to outside us, the ruler, whatever, is actually within us. We are ruling ourselves. And the beauty of this life is to be productive and successful with our own talent,
right,
with our own gifts.
And I want to go back to this question because I feel like it's really important, and I ask this to myself all the time. With this whole connection to our intuition and our instinct, it's like, how do I tell a difference between that inner voice and the voice of my programming or my fear or whatever it may be? How do you tell the difference between those two?
Well, that's meditation. The thing, in order to do that, because as you say, we're all bombarded by the culture. Mm-hmm. And our relationships are complicated, the television, the telephone, everything, the internet, everything is throwing us into a kind of chaos in a way as we try to figure it all out. So we have to be close to nature, I think. As far as I was concerned, I left everything behind. I was very busy in money and real estate, and I knew suddenly that I had to get out of there, and I had to go to a quiet place where I could figure myself out. And so I did that, and it took a few years. And it was kind of an amazing thing to do, to separate oneself from what one has been successful at or what one has been depending on.
Wow.
You know,
so you went through like a total identity whitewashing.
I did.
It was just, was that difficult to let go of your success? And I mean, you were making like tons of money in the real estate business, you were saying, right?
For a while, yes.
Yeah. I mean, was that hard to let that go and to just go live in seclusion and find yourself in that way?
Once I knew that I could make money that way, that it was easy. It wasn't difficult. It was just a matter of logic and sensibility, really. Then it became intolerable.
The money?
The working for money, it was like a dead language. It was like I didn't need it. I had the money. I had some money. How much money did I need? I went around the world, you know, with my wife, and we had a wonderful time. We camped all across Europe and Asia, all the way to Nepal. And we went back in time through the ancient tribes. There they were on the desert, the Bedouins. They were in Kabul. There were people who had been living this lifestyle that I couldn't even dream of. You know,
Wow.
the way of life on the planet varies in each region, of course. And what came through to me was that I didn't really know myself or what to do with myself. The very thing you're talking about. I didn't know. I learned how to make money. I had a lovely wife. Here we are going around the world. Who am I? What am I doing with myself? What's important? And the thing that's important is the satisfaction and fulfillment of this being. And we get all of the feedback immediately in terms of our own condition. We know when we're happy, we know when we're unhappy, we know when we're ill, we know when we're well.
Yeah.
We're wide awake in the moment with this life that we're living. What are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
Each one has the opportunity to figure that out.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, when you went through that process of kind of giving up all these successes and worldly things and went into seclusion, like, what did you do? Just meditate all day? Or like what was your process of going inward and really finding out who you were? How did you peel back those layers of the onion?
Yeah, it wasn't very difficult. The initial thing was I wanted to enjoy it every day. I wanted to be happy in my relationships, and I wanted to celebrate this life. As far as what needed to be done, that gradually dawned on me, because the thing that needed to be done was to help create a more harmonious social order, because the existing one was and still is a mess. And we have government against the person in a democracy. That's not possible. You can't have a democracy with government against the person. So there's work to be done in our social order that requires the treatment of each other in an entirely different way. That's why I use those words, mutual benefit. Every transaction in our life, every relationship is to achieve a mutual benefit. And we put ourselves on the same level in order to do that. We don't dominate, we don't submit.
Right.
We use our own intelligence and our own happiness in order to move forward.
Yeah.
There's almost no pain.
Yeah. And you actually, you've done a lot of things in your life. You know, like you've written a book, you've written and directed a musical, you've made a short film and directed it, you've written a number of songs and recorded them, you've started a multi-million-dollar business, and you're you're a father of 7 and a grandfather of 8. You know,
Amazing.
that's a lot.
Who is this guy?
Yeah, that's an incredible life. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that's a huge juggling act. You know
Well,
what
with
I mean?
me, I would say the main motivating factor for me was, first of all, England, the war, the class system,
Right.
just the difficulty of adjusting to that culture. And I came over here to California, ultimately, and I learned how to live. I learned how to feel rather than just be obedient. I learned how to experience life in a bigger way. But
So it's really like this whole process of you coming over from England and building your life here. I mean, from what I understand about your story, you came here with like barely anything to your name.
nothing.
You know, you just got here into this new country, didn't know anybody, didn't have anything, and just like built this beautiful life here. And so
Yeah.
it feels like for you, it was like this exercise in constantly connecting with your instinct, constantly connecting with your intuition, learning to rely on that above anything else.
Right.
You know?
As you know, it's all one. And this being is all one. And even though the mind has divisions and values and multiplications, all kinds of stuff, the whole being is still here now. And that's what the meaning of meditation is.
Yeah.
And it's the meaning of how to get direction. It's allowing this whole being that one is to really be here,
right.
to be present, and there's nothing to be denied. Because it doesn't get rid of it. You can deny it, doesn't get rid of it. It's always there. So the thing that you deny is really information for the journey. You know, why am I denying that? You know, it's not really deniable. You know, so my journey has to look at the signposts, look at my own fears, look at the society as well without resistance, and move forward.
Yeah. So in your journey, what was the biggest struggle that you've had to face, and how did you overcome it?
My biggest struggle was authority, particularly what I call false authority. There's 2 kinds of authority. One kind is the kind that you consent to, that you agree to, that you honor, because, you know, the guy's a great plumber, or the woman is, you know, a great mother.
They're an
But
expert. They're an expert at what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But a false authority is one that has been given power over the person without any real contribution. You know,
Is that kind of like, you know, what's going on right now with all the police protests? Do you think that's kind of tied into that? Is that sometimes our
absolutely.
government officials are given more authority or power than they really need or should have? Does that tie into that?
Well, you can't really organize a human being with words. It's inadequate. The human being is much greater than any language that you can concoct. So as we have it now, we have a rule of law that is absolute, compulsory, and it's very punitive. It's a big, big problem for us because it puts us against each other. It puts, you know, prosecutors, all kinds of threatening relationships are created out of it. So how do we move through that, and how did I move through that? I had to accept, at Albion River Inn, my restaurant and small hotel, there were all kinds of authorities. There was the health inspector, the building inspector, the tax collector. There were all these people who really had power within the system to punish and to levy fines or make things very awkward. So rather than just being acquiescent to that, I went into the person who is doing the job. And I found in that there were great things in each person. And I could relate to that person, whereas I couldn't relate easily to the false authority.
So kind of like you're saying, that's beautiful, by the way. So like if a police officer comes and has some sort of like problem with me or whatever, you're saying, don't just look at the uniform, but look at the person behind the uniform and form a connection.
If you can.
That way.
Yeah, some of our police are not capable of relating because they're on a mission. They've been given direction to control a crowd, and they're whacking the crowd. They totally have no understanding of what it is to be human. They're obedient to the word, to the law, to the rules.
And I don't think all police officers are bad.
No way. No, it's like saying people aren't bad.
Right. It's like with a lot of this protest stuff, my heart kind of breaks for both sides. It breaks for the social injustice and everything that's happened, but also for the police officers that are getting demonized. That are genuinely trying to help their communities too.
Maybe they'll quit their job. Because
well, don't we need like some sort of order, or wouldn't it just be anarchy?
The purpose of government is not power. The purpose of government is service, and so this is not a police force. This is a police service, and it's needed. Yes. The other thing that is really necessary, and maybe how will it happen? I don't know. But we need a real change in the rule of law. We need a compassionate rule of law, not a punitive rule of law, where everybody's hiding from the threat of grotesque punishment. It's backwards. It's just not right.
Right.
You couldn't have a family run that way. Maybe there are, but that doesn't create a successful or happy family. We've got to love each other. And we don't have to love everybody. Certain people we can't love. For some weird reason, you just don't want to deal with a certain person. And I don't like anger. I don't like authoritarian anger at all. And I had trouble with that at my British school. It was just after the war, and all the teachers came back from the war filled with hatred.
Yeah.
And they took it out on the boys. I went to an all-boys school, very ancient, founded in 1619. And you come out of there almost like a dwarf.
Did you ever get whipped or
of course.
Or beaten or something?
Oh, all the time.
Crazy.
Yeah. And even worse than that, the prefects, the senior boys that were given power, real false authority, they could beat the junior boys.
Oh my God! I've worked in this. I've spent a couple years working in the school system, and I can't even imagine being in that environment today. It's so wild.
Yeah.
It's crazy that level of abuse was just normalized back then.
It was expected.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, I think the thing that we're dealing with collectively, and it's exemplified in the police, that there is this out of control authority over the person that is organized and demonstrated by powers that be, by police, by legislators, and it is not really considering the benefit of the person at all. It thinks punishment and domination is the right thing. And as far as I'm concerned, of course it isn't. And that's the difficulty that I had in England. And I was beaten, caned, and finally refused to be caned anymore.
What did you do? Just stop! Don't cane me! How did you refuse to be caned?
I just didn't do it. I stayed away. If they had a day that I was supposed to be caned, I didn't come in. Anyway, they basically let me go.
Yeah.
You know, there was no point in my being
So
there.
it was kind of a rebellion.
It was,
Yeah.
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 But it was a very, you know, it was satisfying, and it was sensible as far as I was concerned. I felt justified. And you know, I thought I had to lose certain parts of my life in order to do it. But that's what I did. And I think even here, when I arrived in San Francisco, there were hearings being held at City Hall by the House Un-American Activities Committee. And a fellow called McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, had this idea that there were communists in our midst that were really working for the Soviet Union, and that they needed to be rooted out, and they needed to be prevented from working. For example, writers in Hollywood, where he put them on a blacklist. And other people joined this kind of madness of designating people a little bit pink or very red, and it was also punitive. People didn't get work. There was a list of 10 writers, for example, in Hollywood that the studios did not use because they were pink or red, and had been called that by the House Un-American Activities Committee, Senator McCarthy. He became, you know, everybody finally woke up. Mm-hmm. And realized that I think another senator said, "Sir, have you no sense of decency whatsoever?" Mm. You know, I remember something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, America is sort of a warrior nation. Mm-hmm. The military is a major part of the American presence, and the police are that too. And the National Guard and the state troopers and all that stuff, they're all really governmental authority. And I have a problem with that. Mm. I don't think that's the way to go.
So how have you like overcome that, you know, in your life and in your path?
Well, by having a large family and by having a business where I decided that I wanted to own a business. This was after I'd been in seclusion at the farm, where there was no power over the person. Everybody was there as a cooperating, collaborating contributor. Mm. And the problems that came up were easily solved. They were not really that hard. Had a couple of problems that were really difficult, but they came from the outside. Mm. But keeping 60-odd people, 65, 68, something, employees, something like that, there's a mood that can make it work. And the mood is not anger, and it's not power. Mm-hmm. It's not force. It's mutual benefit. Mm.
So it's the 3 steps.
That's
how you overcame that struggle.
Right.
The 3 steps.
Yep.
Cool. So thank you so much for this interview, Peter, and for sharing your story. And I just want to encourage people to check out your book, Notes from the West Pole, Creating a Harmonious Life in an Adversarial Culture, which is available on Amazon. And you can also go to our website, www.harmonious.com. And it's spelled Harmony Us with a Y. So Harmony Us, harmonious.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yep. Onward.
Onward.